I've been told something about Justis Huni on the ground here in Australia that apparently is quite well known on the domestic boxing scene. It's something that I think could have a massive bearing on the outcome of this fight, and I'm going to reveal it to you in this video. This is my final prediction ahead of the heavyweight clash between Fabio Wardley and Justis Huni. And I've got to say that something about this fight just doesn't feel quite right. I'm going to be looking at all angles before I make my final pick, so stick with me to the end of this one, guys, as I try to predict Fabio Wardley versus Justis Huni. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. Guys, Fabio Wardley, Justis Huni, we are here. It's a good heavyweight clash. It's one that I find very, very interesting. Obviously, originally, it was supposed to be Fabio Wardley against Big Baby Miller at the Ipswich football ground, and they've managed to keep the show on, but it's Justis Huni who comes in to replace Miller, who withdrew with a injury with Big Pharma. Miller, you never quite know exactly what the story is, but regardless, he will not be in the ring on Saturday night. It will be Justis Huni. And Justis Huni is someone that has been getting quite a bit of attention in the build-up to this fight because he's somewhat of an unknown quantity. He's someone that we don't know too much about. We haven't seen him in a big competitive fight yet. The best guy that he's fought so far is Kevin Lerena. And to be fair, there's an argument that Kevin Lerena might also be the best win on Fabio Wardley's record had he fought him. But after coming through a little bit of a scare in that fight, Huni's gone on to fight pretty poor opposition back-to-back, whereas Wardley has consistently increased the level of his opposition, and every time he's coming through with flying colours. His hardest fight so far was definitely that Fraser Clark 1 fight, but the second fight was an absolute blowout. Now, there's a couple of things, as I said in my intro, about this fight that they just don't sit quite right with me. They don't make sense to me. And I'm going to get into them in this video and try to work out why I think things are the way they are. And also, I have this piece of information I've been given from a source on the Australian boxing scene about Justis Huni. And it's something some of you might have an idea about already, but this sort of further solidifies this idea and definitely calls into question further for me how this fight is going to go. Just before I jump in, guys, don't forget to bang a like on this video. Don't forget to subscribe to A Guy Called Henry if you're new, and get your comment in the comment section below. Who do you think is going to win this fight? Channel memberships are available via a link in the description, as are my services. I do video production by trade. I work with businesses. So if you're a marketing manager, if you're an entrepreneur, and you need to supercharge your video for your business, then feel free to reach out. As I say, all the information is in the description. Now, I want to try and go through every element of what goes into making a fight, as I always do in my predictions, and I always try and do it in the build-up. Unfortunately, when I look at the mental game, I'm going to have to try and read between the lines a bit because there's not been like a proper legitimate face-off. They did an interview, but it had all the promoters and everybody involved in the football ground. They did a bit of a chat on TalkSport, but it was a lot of nothing really, to be honest with you. So what I will read into is a couple of things that were said. Firstly, Fabio Wardley used that classic Wilder quote. And he said Deontay is one of the only smart things that Deontay Wilder actually said in his career is that you have to be perfect for 12 rounds. I only have to be perfect for 1 second. And it is that mindset for Fabio Wardley. And it must be a great confidence booster when you're going into a big fight, knowing that you have that equalizer, that one shot. And I do think there's a lot to be said for that going into this one, because I do think between the two of them, from what I've seen, that Justis Huni has the more raw ability than Fabio Wardley. I think he has more natural skills. He has the slick footwork and hand speed. And I think he has a way of going about this fight that Wardley can't do himself, and I will get into that in a moment. The other thing that I picked up on was Huni talking about his amateur experience in making that show. Wardley obviously, at this point, famously coming from a white-collar background and somehow having this excellent career as a pro. I think the style he's developed is one of a fighter, a ferocious force, and Wardley puts it all on the line. He is someone that I'm absolutely convinced is going to get knocked out when he gets to the wrong level. It's just whether or not this is that level. I'll be answering that in my prediction. But to be honest with you, I find Fabio Wardley's style highly entertaining because he knows he's going to have to get hit to hit you back. And that's kind of how he fights. He's right on the line the whole fight. He's willing to put himself in the pocket, put himself at risk to land his shots because he always believes he's going to come out on top if you engage with him in a war. Whereas Huni's great strengths for me are, the hand speed, the great footwork, the pivots, the lateral movement. I definitely view him and his strongest element of his game as being his outside boxing. There's not many heavyweights that can move like that, if any. I mean, yeah, you've got your Usyks, obviously. You've got your Italmas who are now coming through, but there's not that many heavyweights who have those great feet to box on the outside the way that Huni can. So tactically, I did my massive breakdown video. If you want to watch that, I'll put that in the pinned comment below and in the description. But my tactical analysis, I basically broke down more Fabio Wardley because he's the one who I feel is a more tactically astute fighter. He's the one who's boxing to more of a game plan from what I've seen so far. I definitely feel that Huni is the more instinctive boxer and kind of does what's in front of him. But In terms of what I've seen tactically, I think Wardley will look to wait for Huni to make mistakes before launching his own attacks, and he doesn't mind taking a shot to give one back, which I do think could be problematic for Huni because Huni does have some pretty bad tendencies defensively. Having said that, I believe that Huni will be more alert in this fight given the size of the task. He said against Lorena he switched off, which was why he got wobbled in that fight, and he's learnt his lesson. So if he has learnt his lesson, hopefully for him, he'll have the right mindset to go in there and box a perfect fight. But I do think that Huni needs to box not perfectly for 12 rounds, but he needs to box extremely well for 12 rounds. I think he needs to box on the outside. I think he needs to use feints and pivots and lateral movement and look to draw Wardley onto him. I don't think he wants to be leading off too much against Wardley. I think you want to try and use the foot speed advantage that you have, the balance advantage that you have to make Wardley fall short, because something about Wardley is because he does commit, he will overreach sometimes. And he has basically a non-existent guard. I've demonstrated this in the breakdown. Wardley is susceptible to lead hooks. He's susceptible to uppercuts. His guard doesn't really do a lot. And his tendency, as I say, when he gets hit is to throw back. And he's really looking to engage in that war mode, that war Wardley, that Super Saiyan thing that he does. It's great to watch, but as I say, he is going to get found out at a certain level. There's no doubt about it. So I won't go really deep into tactics here, but you can go and check out that video if you want to see a bit more about that. I think the biggest things for me thinking about this fight, when I look at the physicality of the two men, because we have to look at the physical attributes, are Wardley's power, Wardley's punch resistance, Wardley's determination, his stamina. He can be in there for 12 rounds. We've seen that. He's been in wars. Like the Fraser Clark one was an absolute war of a contest. And I don't think Huni has had the same questions asked of him. But then at the same time, he's probably got more miles on the clock, because how many times can you go to the well and have that kind of fight? It does take something out of you every time you do it. I don't think Wardley's been in too many wars that it's going to be a problem yet, but it will be soon. And you never know. Now, when I talked about this fight not feeling quite right, what I'm really referring to is that supposedly Huni is meant to be one of the best prospects in world boxing, but he's not been treated like that. You know, he's been brought in at short notice for this fight. I think he's only had 4 or 5 weeks of actual preparation for Fabio Wardley. And given the way I think he needs to box, which is I think he needs to move a lot over 12 rounds, I think he needs to be very, very fit, very, very sharp, and very disciplined. I think he has to be disciplined to a level that I haven't actually seen from him yet. And I think the 5-week notice thing kind of makes me sort of question the thinking behind it. You know, why has Eddie Hearn chosen to put him in there at short notice if he's such a great prospect? Is it an admission that he just can't get him the fights that will move him up the rankings? Is it an admission that the guy has had injuries or has been injured to the degree where he's never going to reach his potential? Or is he just not as good as we all think he is? Now, the piece of information I've been given, and a lot of you will have seen this before. Firstly, he was wobbled against Lorena. Secondly, there's that clip, which I'll put on screen now, which you've all seen, where he's in the ring. And it's a tendency I've actually showed you that Huni has. He throws his right hand and he very rarely brings it back high. He tends to overcommit with it a little bit. And he has been clocked. And that counter left hook that lands on his chin, it was the same one against Lorena. And it was the same one in the ring against whoever he was sparring here. I believe that was some sort of heavyweight kickboxer. But that tendency is definitely a bit concerning, and we'll talk about the need to be tactically disciplined for 12 rounds. But the thing I've been told is that, yes, we've seen those moments, but apparently it's not just a one-off or an unfortunate clip that's been leaked. As I understand it, it's pretty commonly known on the domestic scene here in boxing in Australia that Huni gets dropped semi-regularly in sparring. Like, it's happened multiple times, which makes me think he's chinny. Now, look, I don't know if this is true, but it's what I've been told, and apparently, like I say, it is common knowledge. So if that's the case, he needs to box exquisitely over the rounds. You know, he needs to be really, really good. He can't be taking clean shots from Fabio Wardley. And if he does, you know, he needs to be able to recover and get away again. So his hand positioning is essential. Punching, but making sure he's disciplined with his guard after he's thrown is really important. Having some kind of head movement, some kind of foot movement. All of this requires great sharpness and great stamina and obviously discipline. With extra stamina comes extra ability to mentally focus over the 12 rounds, which is something he's going to have to do in this fight. But with what I've heard about his punch resistance, with the fact he's had a, less than ideal camp, and with the fact that they even chose to put him in there in the first place when he hasn't had proper preparation, makes you question his credentials in the first place. Or maybe they just think he's that good, he's going to go in there and win. But I think it's more likely than the other direction. I have to say that I think Fabio Wardley will win this fight because I've seen Fabio Wardley do what I think he needs to do against guys who were probably a bit more resilient than Justis Huni potentially is. And I also think that, if Huni's going to get Wardley to stay off him, he's going to need punching power. And from what I've seen so far, he doesn't seem like he's the biggest puncher. He's a big man, but his punches are weird. When you watch, it's like he throws them so hard, but it's almost like there's nothing on them. It's utterly strange. And I just don't think he's the biggest punching heavyweight, which is why I think he throws so many combinations, because he needs to make his mark on people. So yeah, long story short, I don't know what Huni's got exactly, but based on my assessment of what I've seen so far, and that's all this is, I'm just looking ahead and trying to predict what I think will happen based on what I've been told and what I've seen. I do think that Fabio Wardley will win this fight by knockout, because I think that he will make this into a war like he usually does. And I haven't seen Huni box in a way so far that makes me think he can avoid that situation. And even if he can, I don't know if he's going to be fit enough. So all the chips are in Fabio Wardley's favor, in my opinion. I also think experience-wise, we talked about opponents. He's consistently stayed at a high level recently. And he's got that momentum of being in big fights. Whereas Huni's had a bit of a break. You know, he's not had a big fight so far, but he's had a hard fight in the Lorena fight. A couple of really easy wins where it's really hard to know if he's actually improved or not. And I just worry that this might be a bit too much too soon for Huni. I do think he's got talent and ability, and I'm not saying it's done for him if he loses by any means, but I'm not sure he's going to win this one, and I just think Fabio Wardley will overpower him and knock him out. And I think there's technical and tactical details that also support that. As I say, you can go and check out that video. The link is in the description. But guys, let me know what your prediction for this fight is. Get your predictions in the comments section below. I'm very intrigued to see what you think about this matchup and who you think is going to win on the night. Also, get your method of victory in there. Also, I want to plug a recent video I did. I did a video which was the 5 most avoided fighters in boxing today in 2025. That was the video I posted just before this one, so go and check that out if you're interested in more of my content. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. Don't forget to bang a like on this video if indeed you do like it. I'm thinking I'm going to do a live stream for this one, so please join me for that. I will confirm it close to the time, but I'm fairly certain that I will. And yeah, I'm really excited for this one. And just the final thing I'll say in this video is Huni's very, very talented. He is definitely talented. There's no question about it. And there's no bias in this. It's just me trying to objectively look at what I know to be true, what I've heard to be true, and try and make a prediction based on that. If Huni goes in there and boxes exquisitely, all power to him, fair play to him, and it's possible. I just don't know how likely it is. But I hope he does. I would love it, and I don't have a particular preference either way who wins this fight, despite me having this accent. I do live in Australia, so I have a fondness for the Australian boxing scene, or I'm developing one. And yeah, I just hope we get a great fight on the night. But guys, thank you so much for watching this all the way to the end. And as I always say, on to the next one.